Really? Well, I only had they talked to me about time today. I was going to wear a catcher's mask, but I couldn't find one to match his shirt. I'm sick. I've got some kind of virus and bug. I'm having hot flashes. I'm heavily medicated, so I really can't. I won't have any memory of anything I said, and so it's going to be fun. They told me the time I had. I gave 5 minutes for my talk, 5 minutes for your questions, and 38 minutes for any questions Irwin will have. Okay, the theme today, there's going to be three things I want you guys to think about today. Be careful what you ask for. We saw the enemy, and it is us. And this is the key one, because we're going to be talking a lot about elections today. Don't spend your time on who you already have or who you'll never get. Elections are decided by who's left, and it is the number one political mistake that candidates make. And it's why we have had such a remarkable run of success, because I get that. I mean, think about a campaign. If I could use a lot of people in this room, but I won't. I'll use a safe one, although we're going to talk a little bit more about this race, because I'm going to handicap a few races for you. I'm going to talk about the ethics ballot initiative as well. If Rick Scott went in a room and closed the door and never came out again until Election Day, he'd get 35% of the vote. And if Charlie Crist went in a room and closed the door, I would have said the closet, but that's just if he went into the room and closed the door and didn't come out, he'd get 35% of the vote. Now, folks, that's a given. That's the way it is. And no one is ever going to change those numbers. It's the way it is. It's called the base. It's why nobody wins 90-10. So if you establish that as the criteria, 70% of the market is gone. Everyone in this room is virtually irrelevant in the process because of that. I'm just guessing here, but if you haven't decided who you're voting for in the governor's race, raise your hand. You're in one of those two places, and I have a feeling I know which one it is, but you're gone. There's no reason to talk to you. Why would I spend $1 of my resources on you? Yeah, I remember in 2003, the first campaign I did, John Mark's first campaign. And I did these TV commercials that Jane just loved. And about 3 weeks, she said to John, after they started running, you know, Yordon may be a great creative guy, but we need somebody else to buy the media, because this is a disaster. I haven't seen one spot. And John said, Gary, you need to talk to Jane. You know, it's what he does. And I called Jane. I said, I am so sorry. I took a leap of faith that you were voting for John. And she said, well, I am voting for John. I said, then why do I need to show you the commercials? I mean, why would I spend $1 where you're watching TV? It's about identifying who that 30% is. And then if you run the numbers out, you're really talking about 16%, because you just got to get over 50. So it's about focusing 100% of your resources on 16% of the market, instead of the folks I run against who spend 100% of their resources on 100% of the market. They shoot a shotgun in the air and they hope everybody gets hit by a pellet. I got a rifle with a scope and I'm going right where I need to go. It is the biggest political mistake people make. The second one is thinking that now that you've heard that theory, you can make it work. Because identifying that 16% is critical. Who are they? Because if you make that mistake and you're spending 100% of your resources on the 16%, you better figure out who they are. In fact, the numbers are even more persuasive than that. Because if there's a 30% turnout, then you've already eliminated 70% of the market. And that 30% that's left is this big now. Remember, if I'm walking a neighborhood now and I just want to go to primary voters in Tallahassee, I'm skipping every 7th house. I mean, I'm just going skipping 6, going to the 7th. Skipping 6, going to the 7th. They're not going to show up. I mean, the voting percentages are going to be very, very bad August 26th. If we hit 25%, I'll be stunned. We may get into the high 20s. I don't know. There'll be some neighborhoods it'll be in 9%. And that's going to change the paradigm in a lot of ways. So now if you eliminate that 70% of the people who aren't even going to show up, and so all the numbers I gave you a minute ago are based on 30% of the market, you realize how small it is, how small this universe is of people who are deciding elections in our community. If you get a piece of mail in the governor's race, somebody made a big mistake. Because they wasted their money on you. You already know where you are. So the key is identifying those things. And our community's changed in many ways. You know, it used to be, it was a 3-legged stool. Business, the black community, and neighborhoods. And the people who won were the people who found ways to get 2 of those legs. Rudy Malloy had business in the black community. Ron Weaver had business in the black community. Carol Bellamy had neighborhoods in the black community. If you go back through our history, you can find every successful candidate and find the 2 legs they got. That's changed. Business is no longer the 3rd leg. The Northeast is now the 3rd leg. We have gone to 2 traditional groups and a geographic area to decide elections in Tallahassee. And that's a strong statement about where business is in the process, folks. You have now become more relevant as citizens and individual voters than you are as business people. That shouldn't thrill you, but it is a political reality. And I'm up here today to talk about political realities. And so from that standpoint, the business community needs to do a lot of rethinking about where they are and about how relevant they want to be as a united voice. If that's something, you know, what I'm here to do today is to tell you what I think the universe looks like. What you guys do about it is up to you. Okay, you've accepted your irrelevancy. I think that's important. Well, sure, I mean, people in North Carolina never saw an Obama ad. I mean, they were gone. People in Texas never saw an Obama ad. People in California never saw a Romney ad. There was no reason for it. They needed to spend on where the 3% of America was that was going to elect the president, not where everybody, electoral votes were already decided. The other thing you've got to resist is carrying on your own conversation. And you will do it. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. We like to hear people who agree with us. So we will spend our time talking to people we feel good about, and we'll say the same things to each other because it makes us feel good. I mean, if a candidate comes to see me and the first thing they say is, man, I am solid. I am hearing from people all over that they just love me. I know they're already in trouble because they're not hearing from the people who are going to decide the election. They're hearing from the 35% who love them. The trick is not making that noise something that you follow. And that's so hard to do. You know, when the conversation is internal to yourself, to your group, you really aren't expending the kind of messaging, and you're not having that conversation in a larger forum. And that's really just such a common problem. It's so easy to fall into. The other one that's really easy to fall into, because it's a hell of a lot sexier, is the rear view mirror instead of the windshield. I mean, the rear view mirror, the mistakes that are made and what's gone wrong and what happened. And that is a much sexier conversation than where do we want to go. But where do we want to go wins races. Everybody's looking for something outside the box. Let me tell you, elections are won and lost inside the box. Genuine, authentic, believable, foundational, meaningful. We have a herd mentality now because people are hungering to communicate. They're hungering to be part of something. 20 years ago, we all retreated to our backyards. Now, when I was a kid, we used to play in the streets. I mean, we'd play stickball in the streets, and the trash was delivered in the street. I mean, the trash was delivered behind the house. We were in the streets playing ball. But we designed ourselves into our backyards. Now we don't know our neighbors. We don't know who's down the street. We become isolated. Well, that's changing. Attendance is up in church. Groups are growing. Fraternities and sororities are growing in size. We are telling people on Facebook about a burger we just had or a dog on a trampoline. We are sharing everything we can think of because we are fighting this need to connect, to be real. And we are tired of the noise. And the noise is what I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about, because there is a lot of noise. It used to be we would beat each other up during campaigns. And then when the campaigns were over, we all kind of got along. We said what we wanted to say. We hammered away at each other. The campaigns were the campaigns. When the election was over, whoever we elected got about the business. That has completely shifted now. Our campaigns are much nicer, although they can get a little testy. But now when you're in office, that's when you're getting the crap beat out of you. That's when people are coming up to the podium at the meetings and accusing you of lying and cheating and thieves and everything you can think of. And we are keeping really good people from running. And I know Gabordi wrote about it this morning. Some other pundits have decided why that might or might not be true. I'm just going to tell you horse's mouth, because I've had 4 business people in this last cycle come into my office, and it happened. I mean, a lot of people running for office come by to just chat. Door's always open. Want my perspective on what they might be running into. I mean, I'm actually 38-0. I've never lost a local race except mine. It's very true. And look what you got there. Oh, Bob was a nice guy. I understand he's now in Africa doing something. We are carrying that conversation to the point where business people are sitting with me and they're saying, why would I do it? Why would I do it? I can't remember every dinner I've had with somebody or every relationship I've had with somebody or everything or any business. If you have a business relationship in this community, you are everywhere. Everybody who does business in this community is everywhere, and that's just the way it is. And there is going to be some conflict that happens up there. The difference is we always accepted that as kind of our community. It's the way we were. We were in touch with each other. Now, it's a violation. And so if you're a business person in this community and you're going, well, I'm doing good in business, life's happy, fishing on the weekends, everything's great, why would I do that? Why would I put myself up there to be beaten up for 4 years? And if you don't think it's a real problem, it is absolutely the reason why some good people aren't running. And so if you want, you get what you ask for. You want business people on the commission. I got to tell you, I'll say this, there is nobody more business oriented than Scott Maddox. And nobody is being beat up more than Scott Maddox. And I think that's worth thinking about. I mean, if you don't want those folks, then keep beating them up and they won't come. It's hard to do business in this community without having run into someone somewhere. And it doesn't mean they're bad, and it doesn't mean they're thieves, and it doesn't mean they're crooks. So it's that rear view mirror conversation that drives so much of what we do, because it's so much more interesting to talk about around the cooler. But the conversation we need to be having is what's going on through the windshield. What do we want to be? Who do we want to be? What commissioner is willing to look foolish? I got to tell you, I was willing to look foolish. I mean, when I wanted to annex Wakulla County, I looked pretty foolish. And when I wanted to buy the phone company, I looked a little foolish. But I was not afraid to put big ideas on the table. And frankly, Sheriff, we should have done it, and then you and Larry could have been like bunkmates. Well, I mean, think about it. Some guys who've been dead 150 years drew a line and said, this makes sense, and we're just going to live by it. when really Woodville could have become an economic center. Tallahassee would have had a deep water port. They've got the land, we've got the resources. I mean, we should be one county. But I lost that 4-3, and I accept the reality of that bad decision. But if you're not willing to look foolish, you are not going to put a big idea on the table. There are proactive commissioners and there are reactive commissioners. We need reactive commissioners, those who have an agenda brought to them and use their own philosophical bent as to the right or wrong things to do based on the agenda that's brought to them. We need those people. Those are critically important people to have in a constructive body. But you have got to have a couple people who are willing to say, I am willing to look foolish to put a big idea, a game-changing idea on the table. And when you do that, you start a conversation that changes a community. And that is the windshield, and we are not spending enough time, in my opinion, in this community looking through the windshield. It's easy to talk about what went wrong. It is bold to talk about what might go right. And we don't do enough of it here. I want to talk a little bit about, and just one more thing on that. It's a direct relationship to economic development. I hope everybody sort of gets that. Because when the world sees us, Google Tallahassee City Commission, and like you'll get a couple of decent things about the website, and then you'll start reading about ethics complaints and everything else. And if I'm a business and I'm trying to decide where to go, why am I diving into that pool? Just things to think about. I want to talk about this ethics, this move to change the independent ethics officer, which frankly I don't have a big problem with. I mean, one way or the other, that really doesn't matter too much. I think an independent officer is not a bad idea. It might be a good idea. But changing the campaign contribution limit to $250 is a terrible idea. I believe it's a very, very bad idea. Right now, soft money is becoming more and more relevant in campaigns. The more you limit campaign contributions that are easily tracked, when you want to follow the money, give it to a candidate. It's right there on a report and you see where it is. In South Florida, Maria Sachs is running and Ellen Bogdanov is running against her. It is the most critical race in the state of Florida because it's going to decide the Senate presidency. Maria Sachs is the deciding vote. If Ellen wins, there's one Senate president. If Maria wins, there's another Senate president. Maria's raised $170,000, pretty good chunk of change. It's meaningless in the race because soft money is going to put in $500,000 on both sides because that race matters to them. And you're not going to be able to follow that money. You want to follow the money here, keep the limits where they are, give it to candidates, and you'll follow the money. You want soft money to start be a bigger player in Tallahassee, start limiting campaign contributions, and there will be folks who decide that this race is too important, and independent folks will start raising money, and they'll start doing advocacy for one candidate or another. And you will change the paradigm of elections in this community. So while I applaud some of the things they're doing, and I love putting things on a ballot and talking about it, as long as that $250 is in there, I'm not. I think it's a slippery slope. It's like term limits. That was supposed to be a really good idea, and it is killing us. I mean, right now you come out of the womb, the doctor slaps your butt, and you are nominated to be Speaker of the House. I mean, it is freshmen that we don't even know are already like the third guy in line. If you're going to keep, and we've made staff incredibly powerful because you want to keep term limits, go to 12 years. Change the number of years because 8 years has been a disaster of unintended consequences. All right, I want to talk just quickly about a few things, then we'll just open it up and we can talk a little bit. In the congressional race, I think Gwen Graham is making an interesting case, but unless Stewart stumbles, I don't see that changing. I mean,
Sutherland.
Oh, sorry.
The other Steve. Hold on.
I meant in case Steve stumbles. I don't see that going any other way. I mean, it's really, the district is drawn for Steve Sutherland. It is not drawn for a progressive woman. Unless Sutherland just makes some gigantic error, I like his chances better. I think Gwen is putting together a great campaign. She's raising a lot of money. I kind of like the tenor of the campaign, but I think this is Sutherland's to win or lose. I mean, it is not a district drawn for a Glenn Graham. Could it change? Yeah, anything can happen because there's still a long way to go here. But if somebody put a gun to my head today, I would handicap it that way. In the governor's race, there is a path to victory for Charlie Crist. If the gun were to my head, I would say Scott, but there is an absolute path to victory. And if you want to know how that race is going to turn out, look at Broward County. If the governor loses Broward County by 30% or more, Charlie Crist will be governor. If the governor loses Broward County by 15% to 20%, he'll be governor. There are pockets that are deciding, remember, 35%, 35%, you want to know where that one's? That one's right down there. And then a very narrow strip of the I-4 corridor, where Puerto Ricans are registering as Democrats 3-1. If they vote, it will change the face of Florida's election future. So there is a path to victory for Crist because he's got $12.5 million in the bank, but he's got $50 million worth of name recognition. And there's another phenomena that's real interesting about why Bill Clinton is. We felt good about Bill Clinton because at that time we felt good about America. It wasn't Bill Clinton. We felt good about where America was then. We didn't feel good about George Bush, not because of anything Bush, it's because of where America was then. Innate voter feelings make a big difference. Florida was very good when Charlie was governor, and Florida hasn't been so good when Rick Scott was governor. And there's something that happens in a voting booth that is undeniable in polling. And it's something that subtle that if there's that connection made, there is a path for Charlie. But otherwise, I'd have to say Scott. And I think marijuana may pass, but they got greedy. If it was medical marijuana, it would have gone 67, 68%. But the ballot language really does open a lot of other doors. Doors I frankly wish were opened. I think it ought to be decriminalized. That's just me. I know that's probably not going to fly in this room. But the way they did the ballot, I think they may fall slightly under 60%. They could be at 56, 57%, and it needs 60 to pass. And that's just the way I handicap those. Eric Cantor was a great example of just forgetting where you came from. He lost because the folks who lived where he was didn't forget where he came from. He forgot. He became a Washington guy, and the people of Virginia told him what they thought of that. There's still a lot of pride in how people vote and how they connect. I know we've got other races in this room. No, I'm not. I will say that every race in this room, well, there's a couple fundamental mistakes from very good people, like not introducing your wife. I would say that. That's one of those things that goes. I don't believe there's a path to victory for some folks in this room, and I believe there's a path to victory for other folks in this room. I know that's about as vague as a terrible statement, but look, the numbers are the numbers, and that is just a political reality. And I've long since gotten over the emotion of that, because when people come to see me, they need to be grounded. They're not coming there to have sunshine blown up their pants leg. They're coming to be grounded in their reality. So when they come see me, they hear what I really think. And there's some people in these races that are not going to win. But I think the idea of running is so important. And this idea of non-competitive races is just the most horrible thing. And so I am grateful to the people who decided it was important to have a conversation, that it was important to have a dialogue, and that nobody should just be granted these seats. It doesn't matter. It's not a statement about who they are as a commissioner or as a constitutional officer. It's more a statement about the need in our process to have a conversation. And if that conversation doesn't happen, it's just never a good thing. And so I think at the last minute, everybody jumping into these races was a very good thing for our community. I just hope we're not keeping our best and brightest from considering that in the future. And with that, I'll open it up and let's talk about stuff. My opinion is that there is no way I would give you that opinion.
Gary, great job, man. We really appreciate it. And on behalf of N.E.B.A, I don't know if this is the new cup. I hope you have the old cup. It's much better than this one.
I'm wearing it.
You're wearing it. You're wearing the old cup. Anyway, you can share this with your wife. We want to thank you very much for coming. It's just been a great. Give him another big hand.
Thank you, Ted. And thank you again, Gary. That was really great and informative as always. Gary has come in the past and given us an update on various things political. Hope you'll do it again. Maybe same time next year. Always good. As Ted said. And with that, we will be back here on July the 22nd for our next meeting. Till then, we are adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Ted. Thank you.